I appreciate everybody being here and the opportunity to speak about something that's very, very important, not only to me as an advocate for victims and many of the folks behind us, as you will hear from, that are not only some survivors, advocates, but people that take this issue really to heart and want to see this go across the finish line and take it to the voters for them to decide. But a year ago, I stood here and we started the process. And we stood with many colleagues, and we introduced and created this effort of a Victims' Bill of Rights. And because this work required a constitutional amendment, which you'll hear a lot about, I'm sure, from most of us, it does require 2 consecutive sessions. And then we take it to the voters. It's a very deliberative process, as it should be in changing the Constitution. And we are working this process through, and we're hoping that the citizens of Pennsylvania will get to decide. We've cleared the first hurdle, as we mentioned with last session, and it is an honor again to be the prime sponsor in the House of Marsy's Law, to get it done and to make it something that the people of Pennsylvania can call their own. Most of you have always been known that as I've advocated for victims, but the public today is much more aware of the uncertainty and that victims and their families face when they come forward to ask for justice. Many times people will talk about the fact of, you hear about in the courts the victim blaming and doubting of the victim and what happens to people, but what you don't hear about is what those victims go through when they are going through the judicial system. Many times they feel that they're re-victimized by our judicial system, and that's why we need to move this forward. They need to have that voice in the judicial system, because we are one of 9 states that do not have it itemized in our Constitution. But the other issue is that in our Constitution, we have 26 delineated rights for those that are accused, and we have 0 for victims. We're not asking for anything that's over and above or something special and they should be treated better. We're simply asking them to be treated equally. That's not something that's out there, far out there, that we should be asking for people who have been made part of the judicial system, not through anything they did, through something that someone else did. Someone did something to them to make them a victim. They didn't ask to be part of this system. Why shouldn't the system at least treat them fairly and equally to what it is that their accuser is getting? I think that's only fair, and that's something that we should be asking for. So we're going to make sure that our voters hear about this and are educated on this, and that they can make that choice for us. But many times we have very, very diligent district attorneys, and we have wonderful district attorneys across our state, and many of them are standing with us here today. I know I saw Fran Chardo was here from Dauphin County. But sometimes things fall through the cracks. Sometimes things don't happen the way they should happen. And at this point in time, those victims have to just chalk it up. And many times you'll hear Jen Storm talk about, she has to say to a victim, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about that. And we need to change that. So we never forget to notify a defendant as to when a court hearing is. We never forget to notify a defendant as to when it is their probation hearing is coming up or their possibility for parole. Why shouldn't we notify the victim and make sure that their voice is heard in this system as well? Instead of a courtesy, as it is in the state of Pennsylvania for the rights of victims, it should be a requirement, and that's what we're asking for today. So unfortunately, the victim's statutory rights, which is what we're talking about, don't rise to the level of a constitutional right, giving victims the ability to have a recourse if their voice is not part of this process. And that's the process we're asking for. So amending the Constitution is certainly a lengthy process. Amending the Constitution is the process we have to go through in order to make sure that our victims have the rights of those that are accused. This is a decision that we're not making this something that the legislature is making the decision, the governor is not making the decision. This being a constitutional amendment, we're putting it in the hands of the voters. We're putting this in the hands of the Pennsylvania residents. It's their constitution. They get to make this choice. So when we're talking about this, I just had a conversation with somebody really quickly yesterday off the floor. They said, tell me about what's going on with Marsy's Law. I don't understand it. So we were able to have a quick 10-minute conversation delineating what we do have and what we don't have and what this is changing. That's what we need to do across Pennsylvania. We need to have those conversations with our voters, and you need to have those conversations. All of the advocates, all of the people that support this need to have those conversations with each and every one of their elected officials. Explain it to them. Talk about how this is just giving equal footing. We're not giving it any better or any worse, equal. Equality is what our Constitution's about, and equality is what we're asking for. So I ask you to talk, advocate, and carry that message forward so that when we hopefully get this on the ballot this November, which is our goal, people will know not only Marsy's story, maybe other victim stories as well, but they will know what Marsy's Law is trying to do, and they will be supportive of that at the ballot in November. So thank you for the opportunity. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and I look forward to working with Senator Sabatina to get for the partnership bill over in the Senate, so we make sure we have it coming from both sides so people will hear a lot about us, so that's good. And look forward to working with so many of the groups that advocate for this change, and we look forward to keeping this moving to the end. So thank you very much.